Well, kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. It's Rachel Froggatt here, Secretary General of the International Working Group on Women in Sport, and then, of course, here in New Zealand, Chief Executive of Women in Sport, Aotearoa. And welcome to our latest episode of Insight Bites with Senior Leaders. I do have to caveat, I do sound a little bit croaky this morning, both not because it's the big one, but I have a little bit of a flu, so apologies for that. But I also started yelling at about 4:15 this morning when I happened to have a look at the news and saw that we had won the bid with Australia to host the 2023 FIFA Women's Football World Cup. It's just so extraordinary. So I'm so pleased to have with us today President of New Zealand Football, Johanna Wood. Hello, Johanna. How are you?
Kia ora, Rachel. I'm really excited. I'm quite elated, but I'm also a bit tired because I've been up all night.
You did say that. I think what were you saying to me just before? You had to sleep about 6 o'clock yesterday evening, just in case you were going to be up for about a 48-hour period.
Exactly. I needed to get some sleep, otherwise I would be really wilting by now. But no, it was very exciting. I had to be up for the council meeting at 1 anyway.
So tell us what it's been like. You know, the meeting was very, very early hours New Zealand this morning, and of course you didn't have voting rights this time around yourself, and Colombia had to step out as the final two bids. But what was it like to be sitting there watching that happen?
It was really nerve-wracking because it was all done digitally from all around the world. I mean, they did a test vote, to see that the app was working. And then they went into the real vote, and then they had the result, but there was a pause, and that pause was so that the President Infantino could go out to the press and announce it to the world at the same time as Council heard it. So we're sitting there, and I have to admit I was getting more and more nervous. And then at one stage he said that he was going to announce the host country, which, you know, a singular host, and we are hosts. So a few of us, I think our hearts sort of dropped. So we were very pleasantly surprised that we've got 22 of those 35 votes.
And it was really right down to the wire, wasn't it? You know, yesterday, I saw you speak a couple of times, and I talked to you on Wednesday, and there'd been a lot of confidence because the evaluation report had been very strong, and New Zealand and Australia had come out on top. But it didn't look like it necessarily would be a foregone conclusion. So tell us about that.
Look, I was very clear, and so was Chris Nico, the president of the FFA, that until those votes were counted, we didn't know which way it was going to go. We were quietly confident, but we've seen it in the past with FIFA where there have been evaluation reports and the lowest scoring country has won. So while the evaluation report clearly had us out top, from Colombia, we couldn't actually believe it until it was completed. But to be fair to FIFA, the whole process has been open and transparent, and they even had an evaluation of the bidding process. So they at the council meeting, BDO presented their findings about the process and how it had been transparent and was fair. So that gave us a boost of confidence during the meeting.
And what does it mean? You know, there's been lots of reports about potential economic benefits, social benefits, benefits to women in sport. Do you think we really understand how big this is and what this really means?
No, I don't think we do in New Zealand understand how big a Women's World Cup is. This is the biggest women's sport event in the world. And if you were going to put it into context, it's going to be bigger than the Rugby World Cup. Now, that's huge. So I don't think we comprehend how big this is. You've got to remember too that this edition of the World Cup is an expansion from 2019 in France, where there were 24 teams. It's now 32 teams. So straight away you've got, two pools bigger than what you had in France already. So there's going to be huge economic impact for both Australia and New Zealand, but there's also going to be social impact, because part of our legacy is developing our women in our two confederations. so with a leadership program, so that's building their capability to participate as women in football, whatever their role might be in football.
And I think that the bid is really fascinating for a couple of reasons, because, as you say, Australia and New Zealand partnered together, but not many people, I don't know, have realised that actually Australia and New Zealand are in different confederations. So the fact that you actually joined together to do the bid was really significant. Can you talk us through how this even came about?
Well, when the World Cup was first out there, and both countries, both federations decided that they were going to bid for the World Cup, but that's when it was 24 teams. When the announcement came in July that there was a potential that it was going to go to 32 teams, I was in France, and I can remember ringing Andrew Pragnell back here and said, I think we need to reopen the negotiations with Australia. But before we did that, Australia contacted us and said, we can't go it alone, we need to join forces. So I think it's the size of the tournament that actually meant, that there was a desire to work more closely together. We had approached each other prior to that, but everyone had decided, no, we'll go it alone. But by the simple fact of the expansion of the size, we made the decision to go along. And hence the tagline as one, because we are doing this together. And we are historic. It is across the confederations. It is across country boundaries. With the Men's World Cup in 2026, that's across country boundaries, but within the same confederation, whereas this one is actually going to be across confederation. So that's really important. And we have both the Asian Confederation and the Oceania Confederation supporting us, which is absolutely wonderful.
It's amazing, extraordinary, really. And there's been a lot of chat this morning, which we've sort of been a part of as well, about the Big Four. So, next year we have the ICC Women's Cricket World Cup and the Rugby World Cup Women's Edition, obviously World Rugby having selected New Zealand. And then in early 2022, we have the IWG World Conference on Women in Sport, which obviously Women in Sport Aotearoa here is running. And now we have this. So what is this going to mean? Over a 3-year period, we have 4 of the biggest events in the world when it comes to women's sport.
I think we're going to be asking a lot of our volunteers, to be honest. It's Volunteer Week this week, and we need to acknowledge the many, many volunteers. And many of those volunteers tend to be women. So I think that, what this will do is that we will elevate the roles that women play in sport and give it the credit that it's due.
And it's actually a really good segue, because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your role as president of New Zealand Football as well, because you've only been in the role 15 months. It's gone, it appears, from strength to strength over that period of time. Can you tell people a little bit about kind of the heritage of how you came into the role and the work you've been doing since you've been there?
Well, I've always been involved in football. My father was a footballer. My 4 children played football. I was involved with football when by asking questions of New Zealand football when I chaired the local sport fit committee for the secondary school principals in the Manawatu. And from that, I got shoulder tapped to go on their board, the Central Football Board. And so I did, and then did that in 2006. And I was asked to go on to become the chair in 2010. And I was really conscious in 16, 17 that it was time for me to move off the board, that I needed to, we needed to think about succession planning. So I worked with a couple of board members in terms of succession planning, and I was going to ease my way out. And then I was asked if I'd stand for New Zealand football. And because I'd decided to give up full-time work and concentrate on my doctorate, I thought, oh yes, I'll have some time. So I was elected to the board in May 2018 for New Zealand football. And then, of course, in that year, New Zealand football had a few issues, which resulted in the Muir review. And in 2019, in 2019, in the March, I was elected as the Oceania representative, female representative on the FIFA Council. Which was interesting because even though I was on the FIFA Council around the Oceania table, I didn't have any voting rights. I could speak, but I couldn't vote because I didn't hold a presidential role, not knowing that the next month I was going to be elected president of New Zealand football. So now I have speaking rights and voting rights around the Oceania table, as well as representing them at the FIFA Council level.
And you told me a number not that long ago about the number of presidents in the world that are men versus women in the FIFA environment. I'll let you tell everyone that.
When I was elected president of New Zealand football, I was the only female president out of 211 member associations.
It's just...
There are two, I think there's about two more now.
Yep. It's slowly starting to change, and you can just see exactly why the women's tournament is so important, because it starts to elevate the priority given to women within the organisation and within football as a whole as well. And you yourself, there was a big announcement just recently, which was really exciting to see, was New Zealand football had made its way right up to 40% gender representation on the national board, and similar results starting to come through in 2 of the 7 national federations. And I can't see that that's happening by accident. So what have you been doing to increase female leadership?
We were very aware as an executive that the government had a target of 40% female representation on national sporting boards. So from the time I was appointed, that's been very much my conversation. So how are we going to achieve that? What do we need to do? How is that going to affect the terms and tenures of other members on the board? Because we might get to 40% this year, but it might be that in a certain 3-year cycle or 4-year cycle, you can only vote for women or only vote for men, or, and so we didn't want to get into that territory. So it's been quite strategic in trying to identify where we were at, where the gaps were, and moving forward. So absolutely delighted that we've met that target ahead of the government's target for us.
Absolutely. And it's a short conversation today, and I know you're bouncing on to the next thing, but of course the conversation wouldn't be complete if we didn't ask you about COVID-19 and the impact that the pandemic has had on New Zealand football and the football community here, but also what you're seeing from your seat looking internationally.
Look, there's no doubt that COVID has affected football because there's been no games. We're starting to see games coming back now. I'm delighted to be able to say we've got community football back in New Zealand. And probably one of the hardest things we had to do is make the decision in collaboration with our federations to cancel those iconic tournaments like the Chatham Cup and the Kate Shepherd Cup. But we did that so that the community game could go ahead, because that's what's important, is the community game in for young people, for old people, for whatever gender, ethnicity, so that you can participate in football, the game that you love.
And I have to ask you this one question as we wind down our picture today. Has this whole experience, and I'm counting COVID plus FIFA bid plus everything else you've been dealing with, changed or impacted your leadership style? Are you doing things differently, making different decisions now? And what can you tell us about that?
I think what COVID's done for a lot of us is exactly what we're doing now. We're doing a lot of it virtually. So we're not, so we, in many ways, we can be more productive because we're not spending the time traveling. We're not tired from traveling. So we can log in, we can have a meeting, and then move on to whatever probably the next meeting, because we do seem to have a lot of meetings, but we're not traveling in between. So it hasn't really changed my leadership style, because I still like to make contact with people. So but I do suspect that some of us, because we're naturally social people, we are missing the closer face to face than just over a screen.
Johanna, thank you so much for spending even a few precious minutes of your day. I'm so impressed that you're still awake, and I'm sure that you've got probably about 10 hours left of your day before you can take a breath. Is there anything at all that you would like to say to anybody watching as we sign off the session today?
Look, I think the thing I would say is, even though COVID's been a real challenge for all of us, I think it's a reminder of what's important. and so it's pulling us back to basics. And don't be afraid to use the opportunities that this terrible disease has given us.
Oh, thank you so much, Johanna. And thank you as ever to our amazing partners at the Trans-Tasman Business Circle who are helping us to put together this new Insight Bites series of episodes featuring leaders from all over New Zealand and around the world. Lovely to see you. See you again soon. Thank you.